early start time tonight at 6 PM, and that's because we have 4 agenda items tonight. And the first one is a presentation by Josh Artuzo, who is the town's Director of Community Development. He is going to be presenting on a Transportation Alternative Program TAP grant application for sidewalks in West Webster Hamlet, which is the corner of Gravel and Ridge, where the old furniture strippers used to be. Take it away, Josh.
Thank you. So tonight, I'm going to a brief overview of what's contained in tonight's presentation. I'm just going to recap some of the revitalization efforts that the town has undertaken to date, and just refresh everyone's memory of some of the priority plan recommendations that came out of a 2023 community planning study. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the TAP grant program and application process, and then we will review some proposed project scope of work and cost estimates, and then have some Q&A and discussion with the board.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Are the cameras working? Because none of the lights are on them.
It shows that they are.
Okay. I just don't see lights on any of them, so I didn't know if they were working or not.
Yeah, they're not on the
There
side
it
either.
is. There's a light
It's
now.
just because we're on the screen.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's a good
I
question.
just wanted to make sure the cameras were on.
Better safe than sorry.
Sure. Okay, so there's been a lot of activity over the past 5 years in this area, really beginning in June of 2021 when the Webster Economic Development Alliance secured a $90,000 grant to do a planning study, a revitalization plan, and it was approximately a 2-year effort engaging with the community. There was a committee formed, and in June of 23, that plan was finalized. A subsequent application in January of 2024 for sidewalks in West Webster was pursued. Unfortunately, we were not successful in that initial attempt, and I'll explain a little bit in more detail later on the presentation. And then we fast forward to 2025, where in May, the town solicited bids for demolition of the former Webster Furniture Stripper building at the corner of Old Ridge and Gravel. That was a major focus point of the revitalization plan. The community members wanted that property and the blighting influence to be addressed. So the building ultimately came down in August of 2025 and has created a lot of excitement and interest in the area since. So just going back to that planning study, the priority recommendations basically focused on the intersection of Old Ridge and Gravel roads. That was identified as the highest priority area based on all of the community feedback that we received. On the left upper hand image shows what we call a heat map. So any comments that were placed on the geographic map that we had available throughout the duration of the surveys. As you could see, the orange-ish red colors were where the concentration of the most comments occurred. The middle image is what we call a word cloud, and it basically quantifies the most repetitive words that were contained in the comments, and the size of the word is commensurate with the number of comments. As you could see, sidewalks was one of the most commented on items through this effort. And then, as I previously mentioned, the community really wanted to see the blighting impacts of both 600 Ridge and 602 Jade Palace mitigated. And the images below are just some snippets from the plan, one of which is a rendering of what the intersection of Old Ridge and Gravel could look like with some streetscape enhancements and addition of sidewalks, street lighting, signage, etc. So a little bit about the Transportation Alternatives Program, also referred to as TAP. So This grant funding source provides financial assistance for projects that improve and enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety, projects that provide safe routes to schools for children and parents, and projects that facilitate and promote the use of non-motorized modes of travel. So the grant details eligible activities include planning, design, and construction of both on and off-road facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists. The application cycle opens approximately every 2 to 3 years. This is the funding source that the town was successful in getting to construct the sidewalks along Ridge Road from 5 Mile Line to Rachel Drive. We were successful, I believe, in 2018, and the sidewalks were designed and constructed through this grant. So there's a maximum request of 80% of the project cost, and it has a local match requirement of 20%. As I mentioned, our 2023 application was unsuccessful, and as the town usually does, we participate in a debrief with some of the folks from the agencies that review the various applications to get feedback on how we can improve upon any future applications. So the feedback that we received was very positive. You know, they were very positive of the project. They literally said that it was perfectly aligned with the program goals. Unfortunately, it was a very competitive year. The only recommendation that they were able to provide us with that said, you know, how to strengthen any future application, it was recommended that the town pursue survey and preliminary design to accompany any future application, which would both enhance the competitiveness of our application and illustrate the town's commitment to the project. So with that information, we did reach out to 3 local survey and engineering firms that do this type of work. And in an effort to kind of provide the most amount of options to the board, we kind of broke it up into 2 scopes of work. Just basic surveying of the right-of-way, plus both sides of the road 15 feet off of the right-of-way. And that would just get us basic topographic and base survey mapping showing things like, you know, driveway aprons, mailboxes, utility poles, and anything within the right-of-way. Then we also asked each firm to prepare a more robust quote that would include preliminary design services that would then take that base survey mapping and start to come up with an actual sidewalk alignment plan. It would identify any obstructions or areas that would require, you know, the town to obtain easements. They would do a much deeper dive on any potential drainage and utility issues with the installation of sidewalks. And it would also include one public meeting with the community to present the sidewalk plan, the preliminary design plan, and 2 internal town coordination meetings. I know on the chart it's listed as also public meetings, but that was intended to be internal town coordination meetings. So each of the proposals were fairly similar in their scope. The one anomaly was the MRB group also included sections of gravel road north and south of Old Ridge. The reason being is that they did assist us with the initial 2023 application, and that phase 1 also included some sidewalks on gravel road. So they took that and kind of built upon their previous work. So the only difference between the 3 scopes is that MRB also includes some additional areas on gravel. So the completion time frames were also fairly similar. All survey only quotes indicated that it would take approximately 2 months to conduct that, weather permitting. And for the preliminary design option, it ranges from 4 to 6 months for a completion timeframe. As you could see, the costs also varied quite a bit from firm to firm. Survey only ranging from $15,000 to $42,500, and then the preliminary design really ranged from $36,000 all the way up to just under $80,000. So reviewing all of the proposals, the town staff recommendation would be to go for the preliminary design option that Costitch Engineering has outlined in their proposal for a cost of $36,000. So survey and preliminary design, why move forward with this now? So as I mentioned previously, the addition of sidewalks in the West Webster Hamlet area aligns with the priority recommendations in the community-led revitalization plan, as well as really fitting the criteria for the TAP grant program and its goals. Moving forward with this would also position the town to have a significantly more competitive TAP grant application, following through on the suggestions that were provided to us during that debrief. We want to continue the sustained momentum from the demolition of the former furniture stripper building. As I mentioned, there has been an increased interest in the area from the investment community. Adjoining properties are being put up for sale and having new owners that plan to invest money in improvements. We're working with several property owners through code enforcement to get some facade improvements and remediate some other code violations in the area. And it would really build upon the town's commitment to revitalization of this area and build upon other investments that the board has authorized to date. I will say that in the event that we're not successful in getting the grant, I don't think this effort would be all for naught. Old Ridge Road was formerly a New York State DOT road, and it was dedicated over to the town many years ago. So in speaking with Pat Stevens, our highway superintendent, the town literally has absolutely no information in terms of utility locations, catch basins, any infrastructure within the right-of-way. We do not have anything on this road. So even going with the survey would be valuable to town staff for when it comes time to either make repairs or maintain segments of that road. Now, we didn't have anything budgeted in the 2026 budget for this project, but in speaking with Finance Director Paul Adams, he indicated that the project costs could be charged to the general part-town B fund, the surplus unappropriated fund balance that was talked about at length during the budget approval process. So here's an image that was prepared back in 2023, just kind of a conceptual image showing what the area could look like with the addition of sidewalks and some decorative curbing. Also, street lighting and signage would also be something that could be considered. So in terms of next steps, we would look for authorization from the town board to make a decision to whether or not to move forward with preliminary design and/or survey services from the recommended consultant. If you chose to go that route, we would need execution of a contract with the recommended firm, so we could then give them the authorization to proceed. In terms of next steps after that, we would work with our existing grant consulting firm to begin preparing the TAP grant application while the survey and preliminary design work is underway. And then we would be in position to submit a highly competitive TAP grant in 2026. So I will say that the prior cycle opened up applications in the month of November, and applications were due in January of the following year. As of November 6th, tonight, the portal has not officially opened, so it has not opened. So we do believe that it's going to be pushed later into 2026, potentially, spring. And I'm not sure if the government shutdown has anything to do with this, because it is federal highway funds that flow through the state's DOT. So with that, basically, and just in case there's any questions about overall project cost, part of what the consultant we're talking about tonight would do is prepare updated cost estimates based on the preliminary design that gets generated. So back in 2023, the extent of that project was estimated at approximately $5 million, which would have made $4 million eligible for the grant with a local match of approximately $1 million. So those were in 2023 dollars. That also included a larger scope. But part of what this consultant effort would also confirm is to finalize cost estimates of the project based on preliminary design. The estimates that were prepared for our initial application were very conceptual because, again, we don't have survey or a preferred alignment, so it was very conceptual at that time. So the only commitment would be for the $36,000 to execute the survey and preliminary design work. So I will end the presentation again with the graphic that shows what the future vision contained in the revitalization plan shows versus what it's like out there in present day. And with that, I'd be happy to turn it over to the board and answer any questions or hear any comments you may have.
Hey, Josh, thank you for bringing this information forward. You answered a couple of my questions already. Do you know what the total linear footage was for the Ridge Road project and the total linear footage for this phase, or for this West Webster?
I
Ballpark?
believe it's just over a mile. It's not popping out at me right now, but yes, I believe that the stretch of Old Ridge between Bay and Empire is 1.1 miles, so just a little over 5,000 linear feet.
Okay,
And then the previous proposal extended it, I'd say maybe another 500 feet in either direction on gravel,
okay.
which is not part of this current proposal.
So you mentioned the 36,000, and quite frankly, I'm amazed at the differences in these price quotes.
Yeah, they were
It's astounding.
wide-ranging.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the 36,000 for the preliminary design, but they have listed here also the 15,000 for the survey. Would we be paying for that too, I would assume, right, or no?
So again, the 15,000 was for the survey only. If we add the preliminary design aspect to it, the total would be 36.
Okay.
So it's inclusive of that
Gotcha,
15,000.
thank you. Now, what are the specifics with respect to this grant, should we get it?
So if we were to be successful in obtaining the grant, up to 80% of the project cost is eligible for reimbursement, and there's a 20% local match requirement.
Okay, what is, historically, what is the timeframe in which the reimbursement comes through with TAP?
I believe that it's tied to progress. I don't think it's one of the grants that you have to basically expend the full amount and then get reimbursed afterwards. But based on our experience with the TAP grant that we got for the Ridge Road sidewalks,
Yeah.
I mean, Paul, do you have any indication of how long it took for the state to reimburse us for that project?
I thought it was within a couple of months.
Yeah, it was relatively quick, if my memory serves me.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Josh. You mentioned that the portal has not opened, although last time this process was in place, it had opened in November. One of the recommendations was that we have this survey and preliminary design. Does it have to be completed before we can put in an application, or is the fact that it's in process enough to make it a stronger application? Since we don't know when the portal's going to open.
That's a good point. Our number one goal would be to try and have this work completed
Right.
and submitted alongside our application. And that's why we wanted to bring it, as soon as possible to the board. I think though, if we were somehow unable to make that happen, if, for say, the weather didn't cooperate and they weren't able to complete it by that time, I think the fact that we state that we have procured the service and it's underway, I do believe that still gives us an edge up. But our number one goal would, and we've made it very clear to the consultants, that our goal is to have it done as soon as possible.
So I guess then I have just one more question. Do you have any idea of how long that portal remains open?
Yes, so as I mentioned, I think last time around, it opened in early November, and then applications were due either at the end of January or
Right.
early February. So
Sorry,
it
you
was,
did say that, yes.
it was about a 2 or 3 month window.
Okay. Thank you.
My questions were similar to Patty's about timing. And if the portal isn't open yet, and we're working on the comprehensive plan, which is going to be making progress and in that similar time frame come forward with, I presume, preliminary recommendations. So does it make sense to push forward with this now, knowing the portal is closed? Or try to time it closer to the report from the comprehensive plan? Sorry.
Okay, so no, that's a good question. So because we went through such a robust planning effort within the past 2 years, finalizing this revitalization plan in '23, we intend to incorporate the recommendations of that plan into the comprehensive plan. So I don't really see a need to wait in terms of waiting to see how the comprehensive plan comes to fruition. This area is actually one of the focus areas of the 2008 comprehensive plan. So we're kind of actually just now getting around to starting to implement some of those. So I wouldn't say that it would need to wait for the comp plan to progress. And I will say that we are fairly confident that there will be a 2026 round, because Congress has allocated a substantial amount of money into this program, and it's on their website that it has been funded. They just haven't opened the portal yet.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Jenny, anything?
No, right now, I mean, with everything's going on with the government, I'm just gonna leery about the grants and things. And for us to put this effort and everything in it, and I hate to see that it's gonna come back and the taxpayer have to end up, chewing up this for this project because we didn't get the grant. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't really have a question as much as a comment that I think it can't be understated that the December 2022 income survey, which is now 3 years old, that is a real feather in our cap that we were able to prove that is
Low to medium
you know,
income,
'cause
yeah.
Webster doesn't get grants a lot of times because we're an affluent, relative community. That area's income study that we did, and I give Matt Chatfield a lot of credit for having, for pitching us to go do that, because that is something that's a real feather in our cap when we apply for grants, in that area. If I remember correctly, Josh, that study is 5 years life.
Yes. Good
Time
time,
flies.
2027.
3 out of the 5 are gone. So we can utilize that income survey that gives us advantages for 2 more years. And then that's poof, and some other future board, if they want to do something over there in that hamlet, would have to get another survey and whatever, so. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
And just for the record, there, resolution number 7 on the regular town board meeting tonight is pertaining to this survey and design work. So just something for the board members to think about as we move toward that. So next up is Pat Stevens, the Webster Highway Superintendent, and he has a presentation update on the Salt Barn Wash Station process timeline and the estimated cost of that, including the demolition of the old highway garage. So Pat, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Here. Thank you. Just give me a second to get this pulled up.
I think it was in the agenda too. It's not there. Is it?
It's there. Let's see.
There was 2 on there, Pat. There was one that had a newer date. Should you grab the newer one, or?
This one looks good.
Okay.
There's a couple of other presentations. You might have looked at the month. Those are probably almost a year old. If there was a newer date, it might have been 2024. Keep a bunch of presentations on this. Let's see here, start, which one? Just trying to get it. This one? Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right, thank you for having me in tonight to go through this presentation and update on a topic that we've discussed several times over the past few years in the development of the highway facility. Most recently in February, we came with an update on the overall building as well as the salt barn and the budget. So this is a continuation of that. So I'll hop right into it. The biggest issue, so we haven't had any scope changes so far on the project. So just to be clear, the presentation tonight represents the same salt barn replacement building with the same capacity that we originally proposed, which is larger than the capacity of the current building. That requires the demolition of the existing highway garage, which is the former main building where all the trucks were stored and the offices were. The footprint of the new building is within that. Therefore, that building has to be demolished as a part of the new salt barn install. And then per some better operational practices, EPA recommendations and things of that nature, we've also got a standalone building that would be used for heavy washout of the trucks to improve water quality from the site involved in here. The plans have they've now been brought to 100% to date, but the last time the cost estimate was done at 60%. And these are the results. This number is larger than we had discussed previously. As we continued the design of the project and brought it to this point, the complexities of the project stemmed larger costs than I had originally estimated using some generic pricing. So here you see the salt barn at the 1.9, the truck washout building at the 1.6. We're carrying an incidental budget for the project that covers design, insurances, legal fees, things of that nature. There's the demolition of the existing building at $950,000. Paving and utilities as its own line, much larger than we expected at $1.4 million. We're carrying a construction contingency on the project of $350,000. And then within this presentation, we'll show you what I believe are possible cost savings to help reduce the overall cost of the project for a total of $2 million to make the current estimated cost at the end of the day at 4.7 and change. So I mentioned the cost savings of around $2 million. This outlines what those are. We have applied for a grant from the state in relation to the water quality from the site for $600,000. We should have the results of that in the middle of December, so hopefully about a month from now. We've identified that within the current state CHIPS funding that we already receive, storage buildings of this nature are eligible for those dollars. We reviewed our current budgets and where we stand, and we believe that we could allocate $300,000 from that funding source to this project. We have an alternate built into the bid to utilize timber frame push walls within the salt barn where they're currently concrete. The concrete has a slightly longer life but isn't deficient in any other way, so that would be a cost savings that we could consider at bid time. Then self-performance is probably the biggest area. That paving and utility number that I had in the last slide at 1.4 million, a lot of the activities within that are stuff that our highway department has the skills to do, that we do for the county for revenue every year, and that we do on our own roads. So if we were to self-perform that portion of the project, we could potentially save up to $825,000 based on my calculations of that 1.4. The last line item there is competitive bidding. That's the biggest factor in this, is all of these estimates are designed to be conservative. And when you get in a good competitive bidding situation with contractors that are looking for work, those numbers could be drastically lower than we're estimating currently. So the next slide, I did a side-by-side comparison of what was presented in February of this year. You'll see that we had numbers for the salt barn, truck wash building, and incidentals that totaled a little over $3 million at that time. As I said earlier, those were based on generic per square foot prices. So if you take the square feet of the salt barn and the wash bay to the tune of however many $100 per square foot, that was the extent of the specifics that were put into these budgets. They were intended to be conservative, but obviously now that we've gotten the specifics of the design pretty well complete, they have proven not to be. There's a lot more complexity, especially to the exterior of the buildings with the utilities, than we had expected, which increases the price significantly from what we thought then. The other point of clarity, which I already kind of touched on, is that the expectation of change from 60% to the 100% plans that currently exist. I reached out to our consultant today, and they said it should be little, if none. We've seen in the past that when we go from 60 to 100, sometimes things come down because several questions get answered about the design, so they're able to be a little less conservative on things. So we believe the figures here are still representative of the 100% plans as well as the 60% plans. So when we put this in totality for the project, as we talked about before, this portion of the project was originally included in the bond resolution and the intent for the project. It was removed for cost savings purposes early on and never bid. So if you look at the current bond resolution and the amounts against it, we're around 21 million for the highway building and additions to Cliff Jones. The remainder of the numbers there are the 60% estimates that were presented earlier for the salt barn, washout, demo, paving utilities, construction contingency, incidentals, and the identified cost savings. So this projects that doing this project with the budget shown here, we would still end up roughly 1.8 million under the current approved bond amount for the project as a total. So key factors to consider as I was going through this and looking at the parameters and different strategies we might be able to take to make sure we keep the costs as minimal as possible. The existing salt storage building currently lacks capacity. It's nearing the end of its useful life and has structural issues. Failure of the structure will immediately threaten our ability to maintain the safe travel of the roads. That's why we're here discussing its replacement before it actually collapses or has a structural failure versus structural concerns. And then the capacity issue, was shown full bore last year with the salt shortage. That the amount we keep on hand can typically be replenished throughout the year. We currently hold roughly half what it takes to do an entire season. So we would like to increase that so it is more like much closer to an entire year's worth. That would minimize the risk of when there's high demand for salt, us needing those deliveries. Right now, we rely heavily on those to make sure we make it through the entire winter without the supply running low. Having increased capacity in the building would eliminate a lot of that risk. The cost estimates are intended to be conservative. Competitive bids may be much lower than the cost shown here. That's always the hope. And then the last note here is that the wash building is a key component of the grant application. So some of the ways we look at cost savings and strategy would be to phase out certain parts of this project to not spend as much up front and space that out over a longer period of time as budgets allow. We would have to, if we were to be awarded the grant that we've applied for this, because the wash building is a part of that grant application, we would have to coordinate with the agency that is providing the grant to make sure that we would still qualify if we tried to phase the wash building out of the project, to make sure that didn't impact any grant award that we might have received. So the next steps here are pretty straightforward. We're in a place now that we could put out an advertisement to bid the current plan and spec package that we have. Once that was done, we would analyze those bids, and we would be in a place potentially to award bids and construct. But obviously that analyzation piece is understated here. Obviously there's a lot of analysis that would have to happen to the bids, but if we don't get bids this time, we're relying solely on the estimates to determine what we think the budget for the project is. With bids coming in, we would have the information firsthand from competitive contractors, and then we could use that to guide our decision-making on any awards or potential awards or restructuring of the phasing. And that is a overview of where we stand on the budget and the need for the remainder of this project. So I'm open to any questions or comments from the board.
So first, excuse me. I want to thank you, Pat, for the amount of time that you gave me with all the questions that I had, the concerns I had, and also giving me a tour of the salt barn. And I agree that we definitely need to do something with that salt barn for sure. It's in a state of deterioration. Even some of the new supports and the gusset plates, you can see that the bolts have already started to rust. So the presentation that you gave me, I think the total was like 6.8 million, which, I almost fell out of my chair when I was there because it obviously doubled. And my concern was, we're sending this entire project out as one project, where to me, and I'm just speaking for myself, obviously, it makes more sense to me to send out 3 RFPs, one for the salt barn, one for the washout building, and then again, one for the demo. And I greatly appreciate the research and the research that you've done, especially with respect to the demo aspect of things, okay? The information that you provided me further proves to me that, we have the right person in place at the highway department. But we're looking at the grant funding as a possibility and the CHIPS funding. So that's an additional possibility of an additional $1 million on the entire project, and obviously that concerns me. I do like the fact that you have the ability to self-perform, and to that extent, I was wondering, do you have the manpower and the time, given the amount of work that we would be doing for the county, to accomplish that? I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Yep. So the reason that it would be feasible is that a lot of the key components of that work would not be critical to the structure itself going up. So therefore, I could phase it out as much as needed.
Right.
So it would be used as fill-in, and that's how we're able to self-perform on these types of projects without impacting the services that we offer.
Right.
is that the schedule becomes flexible. If any of these were absolutely critical to the foundations of the building or something like that going in, it'd be a much different case. It would have to be tied very closely to the bid. A lot of these are storm drainage piping and then paving after the fact. We can operate off of a gravel surface in a temporary condition, and that allows us to do that paving and that work when we are available to do it outside of our services. We can take it literally a day here and there and work through it to get it completed. It might take a little longer than it would a contractor, but we would be able to do it with the current manpower using that strategy to fit it into the schedule.
Thanks.
Yep.
So the only other question I had is in reference to, when I took the tour, did you have an opportunity to dig down the foundation around those side supports? To see
We started to, yeah. The condition doesn't get drastically worse than what we noticed. There was the deterioration of the large
Right.
tieback beams. It stays pretty similar as it goes down.
Okay.
It's a little hard to tell because there was additional moisture down there. So
Right.
I think once a couple of them get dried out, we'll be able to see if the deterioration is a lot greater, but it stayed fairly similar, which in some places is up to an inch of deterioration off of those 6x12
Yeah,
timbers.
I was amazed, some of the ones that need to be replaced right now.
Yeah.
State of deterioration.
And that's the salt effect. You
Right.
don't see wood deteriorate like that in a normal condition, especially underground, but this is definitely getting to that point.
Okay.
And on that note, thank you for taking the time to discuss things with me this week. We had good conversations, a lot of good questions, that, I was able to feed some of them into this presentation, and I appreciate your feedback.
I appreciate your time.
I have a couple questions. One points to Councilman Cahill's suggestion of going out for 3 RFPs, and I certainly understand why you think that could be a possibility and a good idea. Would we be prepared to do that with what we have in our hands, or would there be an additional cost before we could go out for those 3?
There would be some additional effort to sort of reorganize the documents that we already have. So we have all the documents that we need, but there'd have to be some renumbering, reorganization to make them 3 separate packages instead of 1. So you'd have to have additional cover pages and stuff like that. So there would be some effort from a consultant to create 3 bid packages instead of 1 in order to organize it that way from where we stand today. Yes.
Okay. My next question really goes to Paul. Is there anything in fund balance that we could use to offset the cost of this?
Well, the building is a general fund expense. There is surplus in the general fund. You could use appropriate fund balance.
If we were to look at doing that, would we still be staying within the fund balance policy?
Yeah, well, as of right now, the general townwide fund is within the fund balance policy. It's about 44%, something like that. But our goal is to keep it between 15 and 50% of annual expenditures, so
Okay,
there is some room there.
thank you.
Jennifer?
What is the cost, and can you share an estimate of the cost to break apart those bid documents if we decided to go in that direction?
I haven't requested any estimates on that at this time. It would be tough for me to speculate. Unfortunately, some of my generalities that I've used on this have already
Caused
proven
trouble.
to not be, so I don't really want to go down that path again. I don't think it would be a large amount. It would take a little bit of time, given we're near the end of the year. I think the time aspect would change the dynamics of how this comes about. I don't think it would be a substantial amount, but it's hard to speculate these days. Some of the fees that these consultants are needing now to do the work has gotten a little bit beyond my ability to generalize.
Yeah.
So I think it would be
That's
minimal,
fair.
but it's hard to say without asking. Certainly something I could find out.
To Jennifer's question, and it's a great question, Jennifer, how long do you think it would take you to get information from whatever consultants have formulated the existing drawings, which are saying now are at 100%, correct?
Yeah, yep, everything's at 100%, the bid package and this, we just have to finalize the dates for the bid based on what happens here tonight. I would say within a week, we should be able to get an estimate from our current designer for that effort.
And who is your current designer?
We're currently still working with MRB that did the main building.
They're not the ones that put the cost estimate together. That was,
Nope, we utilized Campus Construction
Okay.
to do the cost estimate. MRB hasn't done any cost estimating for construction on either of the projects technically. It was Campus Construction that developed the numbers you see here based on their most recent bids and their estimating department.
I know that the building is deteriorating and we need to get it fixed. How long can we push this project out to see when we can get the grants so we can do the finalizing, number and go ahead with the construction and stuff?
So I've estimated the building may have as many as 5 to 10 years left, but it's a big range. I think as a part of this process, I do want to get a full structural analysis from a PE. Again, we have to do an RFP for those professional services to get a structural analysis. I did reach out to a couple of contacts I have to get an idea, and I haven't heard back from them. I was hoping to before tonight. So I don't know exactly how long the actual structure will stay up, which is kind of what we're discussing here. But the grant aspect, we'll know whether or not we receive the grant in about a month. Estimated sometime in December is when those awards typically come out. So we would know sometime next month if that grant was awarded at this time. But as far as the overall length of the building, again, I'm speculating. I'm not a structural engineer. I just see some of the components that Councilman Cahill mentioned in bad shape, and I know that it's not as long as we would hope.
And I just have one more question. And if we were to go out to bid for the whole thing, to move this forward, should the bids come in wildly higher than what we're anticipating, or at an amount we're uncomfortable with, we don't have to award that bid, is that correct?
That's correct. All of our documents state very clearly that we can reject any and all bids that come in. We're at no obligation to award any bids we receive.
Well, we're a little bit behind, but Patty, actually, you did that nice and succinct, because I have three, I don't know if they're questions, but one is that you have this structured for a resolution at the regular board meeting tonight to put it out to bid, advertise it by the 12th, 30 days, the bids got to come in sealed. We'd open the sealed bids and have them back here to discuss at a workshop on December 18th and whatever. Is that accurate?
That's,
Okay.
yes, that's.
We
the
will
current
not be able to
plan.
hit that time frame if we decide to split these up and go back to and pay more money and all that to split up to 3 different RFPs.
The time frame would change, yes.
Paul, second out of 3 things. How much more money will the town be spending to put this out to bid if we did this resolution tonight?
How much more if we put it out?
Yeah, how much more does it cost us to do a resolution saying, let's put it out to bid?
Oh, it doesn't cost anything. Yeah.
That's correct.
I mean, I'd rather find out the answer.
All right, and to Patty's point, my third thing is that I appreciate speculation and all that, but I'd like to see at a workshop on the 18th of December, did the bids come in low? And then even if the board says at that time, I don't care that they're low, I still got concerns about grants, maybe we didn't get awarded the $600,000 from WQIP, we have no obligation to accept it. Grant comes in high, and now all of a sudden that means we'd have to go to amending the bond resolution. Well, I can tell you, we're gonna shut that bad boy down, and that'll be kicked to the next board in January to see what they wanna do. Or the bids come in exact. But the beautiful part about that is that we have actual things to sit there and look at on the 18th. And Pat, you'd be back here in that scenario doing a presentation, probably with Paul, maybe also with Kyle from a legal standpoint on bonding and all that. But I can safely guess that this configuration of a board, if the bids come back higher, well, then it's dead. Or the next board in January decides, why don't we go back to this and split it up into 3 components? Which I don't know if that's possible to do if we also find out on the 18th we got awarded the 600 WQIP. But a lot of that speculation and if-thens would kind of be known if we put this out to bid and get the sealed bids back on the 12th and come back on the 18th of December. So just food for thought as we get to that resolution at the next meeting. We're a little bit behind, but our next item tonight is Chris Bilo is going to come in and do a presentation on the Sandbar Park. I wish we could come up with a different branding of storage containers, because I think that is maybe not the best way we should describe this, but I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job, Chris. So
Modular, a
Have
modular
at it.
structure, temporary structure.
No.
Is it full screen?
No,
I think unless you have it on a thumb drive, I think that's the best you.
That's the best I'm gonna get. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm here once again, kind of go over some questions that came up from the presentation back in September in regards to the storage container, modular facilities, however you want to describe it. In simple terms, storage container concept down at Sandbar Park. And the idea to move forward with that bid process so that we can get some concrete information, data, figures that we can present to the town board so the town board can make a decision down the road in regards to whether or not this is something that they wish to move forward. But I did put together a few things in regards to kind of some questions that did come up from that last presentation. So kind of similar to what we just heard with the salt barn from a bid proposal process. The town, obviously, we have the option to go out for bid for 2 containers. A little different than the last presentation that I shared, where we were looking at 3. We scaled that back a little bit, pulled one of those off. That was for the stage, just because of the size of that on that footprint just created, I'll say, not the visual concept that I think would be the ideal use for that area. So looking at 2, one obviously, both of those being seasonal for a food and beverage operation, timeframe roughly May to October. It would incur, as Supervisor just mentioned and Paul confirmed, no cost to the town to go through this bid process. It also obviously adheres to the town's procurement policy. So the proposal being one 40-foot storage container, which would operate as a restaurant or a grill, one 20-foot storage container, which would operate as a beverage or a bar. Both units would be equipped with the necessary infrastructure or the bones of the building to support both of those features, so either the food or beverage operation. Things such as stove vent hood, fire suppression system, grease traps, power gas connections. Those would be, again, the bones to those structures. The selected operator would then be responsible for outfitting the containers with their own kitchen and bar equipment as they see fit. Again, very similar to what we kind of went through with the brick and mortar option, where we would provide the infrastructure and the operator would then outfit it for their service or for what the way they would provide. Once the bid information is received, ideally, again, based on our time frame, we're looking at around December 12th or so of this year. Town board would then have the opportunity to evaluate whether or not this is a project that we should continue to proceed with and move forward with selecting or soliciting for an operator. Things to consider is I got for an example, if the bid results come back and they're less than what I shared back in September, so they come in, again, we'll say around 250 for both units, the board may opt to continue and move forward with looking for an operator. If the bid results come back and they're higher than what we thought, then the board may decide to, as Supervisor just mentioned, just stop the process and move it down the road and try to come up with something different down the road. Decision regarding the acceptance of the low bid would be targeted for early of 2026. So again, similar to what we just heard with the salt barn, if the bids come in December, we don't have to actually act on those as part of the bid pack.
We do target in there that acceptance would not take place until possibly February of '26. That also allows us time to be able to solicit and look for a qualified operator. So again, assuming the bid results are favorable, the town will proceed with the selecting of the operator. Selection process will follow basically the same format that we used with the brick and mortar. Go out to RFP, see if we can find an operator who would like to operate these features in a seasonal operation. This process will consider not only the traditional restaurateurs, but also seasonal operators such as food truck operators, since it's a similar business model. I think I did the wrong one. All right. All right, so again, after September, there was a lot of discussion and questions regarding the necessity of having food or beverage option at Sandbar Park. Again, understanding what the cost for this type of a feature, these storage containers, would be, will obviously help the town board with the information needed in order to make an informed decision whether or not to proceed. A couple of bullets that I did put in here, based on some questions that I did receive after that presentation. One was, a lot of questions and a lot of comments about the original or the previous brick and mortar building being downsized or smaller. So the option to construct a smaller restaurant than what was actually designed and bid back in October of '24 just is not a viable business model for a potential operator. It was the consistent message from all the interested restaurateurs was that the building had to be a maximum allowable footprint in order to provide for sufficient seating capacity in order to have a successful business model. It's essential it was essential for the restaurateur to achieve profitability and enabling a repayment of any bond issued by the town to finance the building. So in other words, going to a smaller building reduced the number of people that could be in it, which would obviously impact a restaurateur's ability to be profitable. Again, as an example, if we were to construct a 1,600 square foot building, which was about the size of the previous restaurant, an estimated cost being about $1 million, which would probably be a challenge just based on current construction costs. Bond repayment would be approximately $8,000 a month for that. A building of that size would not be able to accommodate enough seating to generate the revenue necessary for both profitability as well as repayment of the bond obligation. And again, that was a message that we heard with every single restaurateur that we met with. The previous financial model that was used for the formal restaurant is just not, is no longer applicable. That facility carried no bond repayment, required no minimal leasehold improvements, which allowed for a totally different financial structure for them. So a lot of people that have the, bring up the comment or have the concern of, well, why don't we just go back to the same model? It's just not feasible. If the new project bids allow that the town could actually purchase the containers outright without the need for any sort of bond, for example, by using funds out of the Parkland Trust Fund, then the resulting financial arrangement with any operator would be significantly be more feasible and sustainable for the operator. If we were not having to have a bond payback to the operator, obviously then the town has a much easier time to be able to negotiate any kind of a licensing agreement or restaurant agreement with them. So the town did actually reach out. Pass Road Design actually did work with us at no cost to develop a conceptual vision for that site. This does show that 40-foot restaurant building, does show the 20-foot bar featuring the walk-up and window seating. Obviously the restaurant operator would have the right to be able to do things such as table service if they so desired. Additionally, plan incorporates a small covered stage to accommodate music or other type of performances. Obviously, the site does allow for other features that could be considered. Things again like fire pit with seating, patio heaters, outdoor play areas such as cornhole, television, and even something such as a kayak rental. So these are the conceptual drawings. I wish I could make them a little larger for you. But you can see that's a 40-foot container that is on the north side of the grass area. And then that is the 20-foot bar feature that's actually on the east side of it. Plenty of seating, room for additional table seating, whether it's for table service, and again, also showing it out onto the walkway. And that's a close-up of what a bar storage container modular facility could look like. So ideally, what we'd like to do is using this concept is go out to bid, see what the cost it would be for a 40-foot container, a 20-foot container, and then take those facts and that data, present it to the town board, and make a determination. While that process is going on, we'll begin the process of reaching out to potential operators, see if there's interest. I can tell you that in order to put the information into a bid pack that would be comprehensive for what, would be required for the bones, so to speak. I've had a few discussions with some food truck operators. I've had very good conversations with them about what they would need and what type of infrastructure, and they were all pretty similar in the fact that they're just looking for general setup, and then they actually outfit it to their need. But we also discussed the possibility of kind of going to the next step in regards to potentially looking at including them in the RFP for an operator. So there is interest there from some vendors, but again, if we're looking at a 2026 season, we need to begin this process now so that early in 2026, potentially we can move forward with the acquiring of these containers. Questions?
Who pays for once the container is delivered with the bare bones inside of it? Who pays for bringing it up to what they would want to utilize it for?
Great question. So one of the things we did put in the bid pack is one of the bid alternates is actually a connection to the utilities. So is that what you're asking for?
Well,
Like the
yes
connection?
and no. So say they're in the bar, we're not going to provide, coolers and all that other stuff, right?
Correct.
So who,
The operator would.
he would. So the timing on this has got to be kind of difficult, I would assume, because you don't want to pay for these containers, have them delivered, we don't have operators, and then where do we go from there?
Well, ideally, what'll happen is from here to the point of making a decision whether or not to purchase, we will begin soliciting for operators. If we can find an operator that is willing to work with the town, then we'll actually begin the process of determining what their needs would be to be able to include in the unit.
Okay. So I know that you reached out to some of the vendors that were there this summer, right?
Mhm.
About this very idea.
Yep.
And they seem to be in agreement that, the containers would be the way to go.
Yeah, I had actually 2 meetings in the last couple of weeks with 2 of the operators that provided food service this past summer with their truck. And they were the ones to kind of provide some insight of some of those, again, those bones to what needs to be in there. Things like in Monroe County, it's 3 sinks are required in a restaurant, where in other areas, it might only be 2 sinks, but in Monroe County, you need to have 3 sinks. So as part of our bid pack, we made sure that we had that feature built in. So they were helpful in designing that piece, as well as sharing their interest in potentially operating.
And who is gonna pay for these containers? The town does or the
The town would.
vendors?
The town would, because the town would actually own them.
But then the town would, the restaurateur would pay a lease,
Correct.
which would help pay for that
So-
facility.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. I was just sort of trying to answer Ginny's question, but I think that, like the salt barn, it's very hard to make a decision on something if you don't know
Correct.
what it's gonna cost. So, like Chris outlined in his presentation, if this is $800,000 or $1 million, it doesn't create a viable business model, and then you're making a decision based on data as opposed to presumption.
I'm smiling as you say that because anybody who knows me knows that I'm going to have a T-shirt printed up and it says, "I pray for patience and I want it right now." One of the things I really have no patience for is theoretical discussions and trying to project without data and facts. And I don't know why we wouldn't go out to bid to get these numbers so that we can make an intelligent decision. Until we have that, it's just talk that keeps going round and round.
Well, we do have some projections, and how this differs from the highway department is in the highway department, that package, we have the ability to send out 3 different RFPs at probably a minimal amount of money, plus it would only take about a week per pat to get the information back as to cost. With respect to this concept, Chris, I've been to Backwoods, and I saw that setup, and I really like it. And this name of Backwoods, that's the setting. And I don't see that setting here at all. I just don't. I'm not saying I'm not willing to send it out to bid.
Sure.
I absolutely am, but
Sure.
I don't know.
Well,
My personal feeling is that it's not really the setting for containers at Sandbar Park. I don't have a suggestion as an alternative, but I'm more than willing to send this out.
Sure, and
And
then
I'd
when-
like to have
yeah.
more public input on this also.
When you receive that feedback, when we receive the bids back, then obviously that gives you the fact to be able to determine whether or not it's something, the cost may come back and may change your mind because of, the ability to have an operator to be able to bring in revenue to offset the cost of the expense. It's worth it. I think it's worth it for us to be able to move forward and be able to
And
Patty's
I don't
comment.
disagree with
Yeah.
that whatsoever.
And then at that point, you'll make your decision whether or not to proceed with it.
So would you be looking to have us make this decision before January 1st?
Decision to,
Which way to go?
no.
Okay.
No,
thank
as
you.
part of the bid pack, it's actually written right in the bid pack that a decision wouldn't be made until February of '26.
Outstanding.
The other thing I would like to interject is I actually saw one of these in the opposite setting as Backwoods. I was in Estes Park last week, and there's one sitting right on the main street of Estes Park, and it functions just beautifully.
Where is that, by the way, Estes Park?
Colorado.
Colorado.
Darn it.
So, Chris,
I'm not going there.
Gantt
I saw a
charts-
lot of elk, too, by the way.
Gantt charts are nice because they're visuals, so let me do a verbal Gantt chart and tell me where I'm wrong on this, because I'm sure I'll be wrong. Tonight, when we get to a resolution I'm putting out to bid, which doesn't cost us anymore, if we decide not to put it out to bid, we're done. If we decide to put it out to bid, then the next thing that would happen is that on the 18th of December, you would come back and show, in a workshop, show what we got on those bids.
Correct.
If the workshop, if you want to call it, is there $1 million for these things, it's dead. We know that, right? But let's say it's palatable, okay? Then the resolution that would be on the 18th regular board meeting is to put out an RFP to the restaurateurs, bar owners, and the food truck operators who have shown interest. Then we all say Merry Christmas, we go home, and then in January, late January or February, when you get back the RFP and have a valid operator, let's say. If you don't have a valid operator, once again, the town board in January, February says, we're not moving forward with accepting the bids on the containers because we don't have an operator.
That's correct.
All right? But if you have an operator and you come to a workshop in late January, early February and say, hey, we have this operator at this cost, this and that, they're very excited, this, that. Well, that would have 2 resolutions potentially that night after that workshop in late January, February. One, to accept the low bid, which you're building the bid package, to telling them right out of the gate, hey, you're giving us this bid by December 15th, but we're not accepting it until February.
Correct.
And we don't have to accept any bids. So that would be one resolution, and the second one would be probably some semblance of accepting the operator who that board has decided is valid.
Correct.
Now, in that Gantt chart, did I miss anything?
No, you're spot on.
Okay, because that crosses over into 2026, I mean, the risk of everybody is that 3 new board members, even if it's, well, the cost is good and we got a great operator, they might say, we want no part of this. We got public input, this and that. We want no part of this.
Correct.
And that could happen. Doesn't matter if we got a great operator and we got very reasonable cost on the low bid, that's out of the control of this 5-person board.
That's
The only
correct.
control we have is to put this out to bid, knowing that then we're not dealing in with whatever you said, patience, whatever.
I need some facts.
We're not, if then, we'll find out by the 18th if it's what the price is.
Correct.
And you're willing to take the risk of the time investment also to go out to find out how to put together an RFP, and I know Keith is helping with this, to the operators who have already shown interest. So
And
that's.
that model, we're just gonna follow a similar model to what we did for when we did the brick and mortar. It'll be
Sure.
very similar to that. And again, the reason why we're doing this now versus at a later point is if we want to have any semblance of a 26 season down there for this,
Yeah,
we need to have the information ready early in 26 to make a decision.
sure.
It would be good for this to also line up with the comprehensive plan, which I believe there is another meeting with some of the preliminary results in the February timeframe, which should line up nicely with understanding if this type of feature is something that is commensurate with the community input and recommendation from the comprehensive plan.
Sure.
So having the cost estimate now would be a key piece to having those two things have the opportunity to even come together.
Good point. Anybody else? Because we're a little bit behind, but, thank you, Chris. Lynn, does this mean that you had 3 sets, not best of 5? No, your son in the volleyball game.
Oh, yes,
Did he,
no.
did he finish early because he won and
No, I
swept?
came in early to make sure I was here, but yeah, if they're gonna win it, I think.
Oh, okay, well, that's good. Well, Lynn, come on up. I don't know if you want to stand at the podium, or how would you like to set Lynn up for her presentation slides? And
Wherever you'd like.
I'm just wondering,
It's up to you. I can
here you
flip
could
through if
see it
you
on
tell
the
me when,
screen.
Or if you
Okay,
want to stand there, if you want to do it regular like Chris did.
okay, I can stick there.
And I keep referencing, I'll let Lynn introduce herself, but she is from Witham, who we did our Safe Harbor memo on the RNG project.
Yes.
And so we slotted Lynn for 7 o'clock tonight instead of 6 o'clock because her son had a sectional volleyball
He
game,
did.
which I can appreciate.
I
So
appreciate
I'm glad
the
to hear they're gonna win. So without further ado, Lynn, take over.
Yeah, so, thanks for having me tonight. I did put some information about me because you probably have never seen me or heard me before. So I work with Witham, and I am in the National Tax Service Group, so we deal a lot with new and pending legislation. And also I lead the clean energy practice for Witham. So I've had the privilege of working with a variety of for-profits and not-for-profits since the Inflation Reduction Act, to, really maximize investment in clean energy. You might say, well, how have not, we might have been seen obnoxiously recently at the Buffalo Bills game with them everywhere, is recently because we merged with upstate New York and Buffalo, Rochester, and Batavia. So I was with the firm before that, but now we merged into 3 additional firms. That brings us to upstate New York, and we were referred in to the town of Webster to help. So today I was asked to talk a little bit about the biogas property that you would be able to work with or utilize or extend, I should say, which is part of your waste recovery system that you've been working on since, I believe, 2023. But, so just so you're aware, if you're not, I am not an engineer so I will admit that. But essentially what it happens is you are able to bring in a certain amount of methane, which you'll see there has to be a certain concentration. And that methane then can be put through a biogas system. That biogas system can then provide you with natural gas. And so obviously, you already had the system using a portion of that natural gas for the town of Webster. And now there's the ability to use the remaining portion as opposed to burning it off, which obviously is not great for the environment. But there's an ability to essentially work with RG&E and be able to sell that natural gas. It's a very popular method. For your particular case, it was really important for us to get comfortable that the property or the biogas property would start construction before December 31st of 2024. If you want to know why, I'm happy to answer additional questions, but essentially the tax law kind of flipped between two code sections between 2024 and 2025. And so for us to be able to maximize any federal tax credit that would be available to you, we needed to get comfortable construction started in 2024. So the beauty about, which is, I don't know how many of people have followed the Inflation Reduction Act, but for the first time in history, you're being allowed, Indian tribunal organizations, governmental authorities, and not-for-profits are being allowed to get a refund in relation to these credits. So you might be aware that's very unusual, that has never happened in the past, and essentially it was because they knew that in order to decrease greenhouse emissions over the years, they needed everyone involved, for-profit, not-for-profit, government, et cetera. And so as part of this, they're saying, okay, look at your property that you're investing in, which in your particular case is the biogas property, and they're saying you can receive a credit for that. So the credit that we would be looking to place on that cost basis would be 30%. So that means for every dollar you're investing in the biogas property, you're receiving a refund from the federal government of 30 cents. So it's quite significant. The only item I like to bring up as well, which I'm sure you have no intention, but there is a recapture period. So to the extent that we claim the refund and then you stopped using the biogas property in the next 5 years, there could be a portion of that refund that would be recaptured or have to go back to the federal government. And generally when people take up this kind of investment, they are tuned and aware of that they are going to be operating these types of facilities for a long time. So again, if you remember, I said it was really important for us to make sure you started construction as of 12/31/2024. And essentially how we did that is we used what's referred to as a 5% safe harbor, which has been around for a long period of time, even before they allowed not-for-profits and governmental agencies to absorb a refundable credit. And they essentially provide that you must have incurred or paid 5% of the total cost of the energy project prior to December 31st of 2024. And so what our analysis was to understand more about this particular biogas project and how it engages or intertwines with the larger waste management project that you're working on, and identify integral parts to this particular biogas facility and understand how much you've paid in relation to those parts. And so by going through our analysis, which included, obviously working with the engineers you're working with, but also our external engineers in our group to make sure they felt that the estimates were appropriate and the property that was being evaluated was appropriate, we were able to gather that you had spent approximately $3.5 million, cashed out the door. That number adjusted a little bit today that you'll see in the final memo that you hopefully received. But that essentially means that we clearly have exceeded the 5%. We've actually are at a 10.6%. So that gives us a very strong case, and it's documented in the memo that we've provided that there's no question that this project started construction in 2024. What's nice about the 5% safe harbor as well, you might say, well, Lynn, what would happen if we went over? Like, if we said, right now, we're estimating the biogas project to cost about 33.5 million. If I go over, do I lose the federal credit? And the answer to that is no. Essentially, right now, you would have to go over 70 million, which would not be possible, I don't think, for this particular project, in order for them to come in and start saying, well, you can't use all the costs you're incurring for this project towards the federal tax credit. The other item of focus for us was making sure everyone understood that once the 5% safe harbor is met, there's a second requirement, and the requirement is called a continuity requirement. So for example, I can't just spend 5% and then decide in 10 years I'm gonna actually work on the project. So the continuity safe harbor, you can either show every year what you've been doing to work towards completion, or there is a safe harbor in the continuity rules which say, okay, as long as you've placed it into service 4 years after you initially started the project. So your external engineer that's helping you, or project manager that's helping you with this project is Navitas. The contract was signed on June 16th, 2023. So as long as we have the project placed into service as of December 31st of 2027, there's no question that you will meet both the safe harbor test and the continuous work test. And that December 31st, 2027 date was agreed upon. Webster feels very comfortable when I talked with the people here that would be met, as well as this external engineering firm that you're working with. So here you'll see the potential investment and the tax credit range. And so I would say on the right-hand side is where Navitas has said, this is what we think is going to count towards this particular clean energy project, this biogas project. And then here, because I'm an accountant, so I'm conservative. So I put, okay, let's assume we get 80% of what Navitas is estimating. What would that look like? And so you'll see the initial ITC credit, I'd say on the low end would be 8 million, on the higher end would be 10 million. There is possibility that $33 million that's been identified could get greater, depending on our analysis of how other pieces of the project could be integral and could be included. But right now I'd be comfortable with saying, initially an $8 to $10 million range. As you probably are aware, this large project was being funded $20 million by a New York State grant, and then the remainder amount was being funded by eventually municipal bonds. And those municipal bonds are considered tax exempt, and so there is a haircut. So essentially what the government says is, well, we're already not taxing people on the interest they're earning from the municipal bond. You can't double dip and receive that same benefit on the ITC credit. So the haircut, for example purposes today, we assumed there would be a full 15% haircut. That again would have to be evaluated as to whether potentially any of that $20 million grant received from New York State, and I think there was a little bit, I think $2 million from the American Rescue Plan was used, whether we could allocate some of that to this to reduce that 15%. But most likely you're looking at, in worst case scenario, it can't go above 15%. So that would bring your ultimate ITC credit that we're estimating at this time to be somewhere between 7 million and 8.5 million. That is generally received when the project goes into service, or the energy project. So if they were great and it was really moving quickly and there was no hiccups and it went into service in 2026, then you'd claim that on your 2026 return. If it goes into service in 2027, you'd claim that on your 2027 return. Something interesting for governments that we've worked with other clients on is generally you've never filed a 990, so you've never set up your taxable year end. So it gives us some flexibility. So if they say to us, well, Lynn, we're gonna have the project done in March of 2026 or 2027, then I would say, okay, well then we're gonna lock you into a March 31st year end, because it's really not relevant for governments for a tax year end. And so that would be able to file your tax return more quickly and get the refund more quickly instead of waiting until the end of the year to file your tax return. I think that's it.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn?
So,
John, while you're thinking of that, I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is the one presentation tonight that isn't followed by a resolution on the regular town board meeting agenda. What will happen next in this process is on the 20th, Paul Adams will give a presentation about the financial aspects of this, and then Bob Wimmer from Navitas will give a presentation at the workshop about what they think it's gonna cost to engineer and design. So no resolutions tonight on this.
I know.
So,
Are any of these incentives subject to change at all?
Oh,
by
that's
the
great, that's a great question.
By the current administration?
So the current, I would have agreed with you that I had concern last year at this time, but the current administration just actually passed the OBBA. And that was where a lot of people were saying, we don't know where this clean energy initiatives are gonna go, including the direct pay election is what you're using to say, I want a refundable credit. But that was passed on July 5th, and you are good to go.
Okay.
It's a clear runway for the next 10 years. So, yeah, you shouldn't be concerned. Now, I mean, obviously, if President Trump goes out of office and you get a new president, we're always subject to potential tax legislative changes, but if you have your projects in service by 2027, you should be locked.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
anybody else?
No, I'm sure we're going to hear more on the 20th, but the one thing I want people to be aware of is that some of these benefits apply to work that we've already done if we move forward with renewable natural gas. So there's the potential to recoup money on the project as it stands now if we add this additional portion.
Right, so that was how we were able to say we started construction in 2024. The primary digester that's already in existence, right, is integral to the biogas facility working. And so there's a primary and secondary digester that we were monitoring for this project. And so the numbers you saw up when we said project cost times 30%, that's not the additional investment. That sounds like Navitas is gonna come in and talk to you about what that additional investment might look like.
I think
Thank
the
you.
additional investment, somebody told me, I think I was talking to Rick or somebody, that was between 6 and 9 million.
That was their, I don't know if I'm allowed to speak to that. That's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 9 on the RNG that the board chose to go with a couple months ago, because the $6 million one was when we were gonna just do power on the campus. The $9 million option had the more bang for the buck. I will say this, when you look at this page, the last page before the questions, when you look at the total ITC basis of $33,400,000, all right? Well, we know we're in contract for $85 million, all right? And if we add $9 million to that, that means it'd be a $94 million project. Well, the reason why the only $33 million we're estimating qualifies as part of this biogas, not the full, what would be 94 million. Now, the interesting thing about that, which I was really happy, and so was Paul, as a couple of accountants, that when we were on a Zoom meeting with you and your engineers and all your technical people, they seemed to be pinging Rick and I and Paul saying, I think you're being too conservative. You're not adding parts of this $85 million project that would probably qualify. And we said, you know what? We're going in front of the town board, do it conservative.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather the surprise in 2027 be that it's a $10 million credit or tax refund than it going the other way. So we were pretty happy with that, weren't we, Paul, that we were doing this conservatively.
Always be conservative.
Always be conservative. Any other questions or comments?
There's also a revenue aspect to this, right? So you invest more, there's more revenue and a higher
We're
tax
hoping
credit.
by 2 weeks from now, that'll be part of Paul's presentation, because we've been researching with Navitas about, we estimated at $750,000 a year, but doubting Thomas, we're putting our fingers in the holes and starting to get some outside firms that are corroborating that. We're not ready to present that yet. We were ready to present the deliverable that the board did last month, which was no more than $40,000 for the safe harbor memo. And I gotta thank you, because you got it done very timely and were able to present it. This was a high-level presentation. The actual memo, I don't know if it's been delivered yet, but the board will all get it, and then
14 pages.
Yeah. it's a
14
little-
pages.
it's a lot.
We'll have a lot of fun, but I
But that's what you
appreciate,
wanna do with this, right? We don't
Yes.
want the IRS coming in and asking us questions that we can't have answered in this memo that we provided.
all right. Well, Lynn, thank you, and
Yeah.
is your son on to the semis or finals?
Semis and then states, I think the. big
All
one-
right.
I think Penfield's the big one, so we'll see.
So, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna close out the workshop. It's 7:29. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we will be back for the regular town board meeting at 7:35.